How I learned English and changed my life. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel. I'm 24 years old, and I'm from a small town in Poland. Today, I want to share my story with you. The story of how I went from barely speaking English to becoming fluent in just 6 months. No expensive schools, no fancy trips abroad, just determination, mistakes, and a method that truly worked for me. The beginning of my journey. 6 months ago, I could barely introduce myself in English. Whenever someone asked me, "What's your name?" I would freeze. I would panic inside, even though I understood the question. I could hear the words in my mind, but my mouth refused to cooperate. I felt embarrassed, stupid, small. But something happened that changed my life forever. Let's rewind to the beginning. Back then, I was working at a small IT company in my hometown. I loved computers, coding, and solving problems. My days consisted of troubleshooting software issues, writing code in PHP and JavaScript, and occasionally helping design user interfaces for local businesses. The work was interesting, but I always felt there was something more waiting for me beyond the borders of our small tech community. Deep inside, I had a dream. I wanted to work remotely for international clients. I wanted to travel, meet people from different countries, and expand my world. I imagined myself coding from a beach in Thailand one month and from a cafe in Barcelona the next. I pictured myself collaborating with brilliant minds from Silicon Valley, exchanging ideas that could potentially change the digital landscape. But there was one big wall standing in front of me: English. My relationship with English had always been complicated. In school, I learned the basics: verb conjugations, common vocabulary, simple grammar rules. I could read technical documentation with the help of translation tools. I could even understand simple YouTube videos if they spoke slowly. But speaking? That was my nightmare. In my company, the CEO announced one day that there was a huge opportunity coming up. A US-based client was looking for software developers, and they were willing to pay triple the local salary. The client needed someone who could develop mobile applications using React Native, which happened to be my specialty. My heart jumped when I heard the news. I knew I was ready technically, but then he added, "Good English skills are mandatory. You'll need to communicate with their team daily." And just like that, my excitement crashed. My colleagues looked at each other nervously. Some of them spoke decent English, but most of us had never needed it for our work before. I watched as a few of them immediately dismissed the opportunity, muttering that it wasn't worth the stress. Others started frantically searching for language courses online. Still, I decided to try. The failed interview. I spent hours practicing interview answers. I wrote scripts for myself and memorized them like poems. I watched countless YouTube videos titled "How to Ace an English Interview" and "Common Interview Questions in English." I even asked my friend Marek, who had studied in London for a semester, to help me prepare. "Just relax," Marek kept telling me. "You know your stuff. The technical part will be easy for you." But when the actual interview day came, everything fell apart. I still remember that interview like a bad dream. I sat in front of my laptop, wearing my best shirt, hands sweaty. The interviewer's face appeared on the screen, a friendly-looking man named Robert. He smiled and asked, "Tell me about yourself." It was a simple question. I had practiced this. And yet, I froze. I stumbled over my words. "I am Daniel. I work at Good. I like computers." The words in my head refused to come out properly. I could feel sweat trickling down my back. Robert asked about my experience with React Native, and I knew the answers. I had been working with it for 2 years. But in English, I couldn't explain even the basic concepts that I used every day. Robert smiled politely, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. He tried to make things easier by asking simpler questions, but each one felt like a mountain to climb. The 30-minute interview felt like a 3-hour torture session. I left the interview feeling crushed, not because I wasn't good enough technically, but because I couldn't communicate. That evening, I went for a long walk. The spring air was crisp, and the streets of my town seemed smaller than ever. I thought about giving up, about settling for a life that felt too small for my dreams. I passed by the town's main square where older men played chess and gossiped in Polish. Would this be my future? Always limited to what I could achieve within these familiar boundaries? But deep down, a fire started burning. I told myself, I will not let English defeat me. I will learn, no matter what. And that night, my journey truly began, creating my own method. I decided I wouldn't waste time or money on traditional courses again. I had tried them before. Boring textbooks, endless grammar drills, memorizing vocabulary lists that I would forget the next day. I needed a different plan, a real, practical, powerful plan. The first thing I realized was that learning English was not about knowing more words. It was about being able to use the words I already knew. So I created my own 30-day system. Stage 1. Building foundations. For the first 30 days, I banned myself from studying new vocabulary. Instead, every morning, I practiced speaking the basic sentences I needed most. Hi, how are you? Can you repeat that, please? I'm learning English. I don't understand. Could you speak slower? I wrote down 50 essential sentences and practiced them 10 times every day. I would stand in front of my bathroom mirror, making sure my mouth moved correctly with each word. It felt awkward at first, like moving my tongue through honey. But after a few days, these sentences became automatic. I could say them without thinking. Then I began talking to myself. When I cooked breakfast, I said aloud, I am cooking eggs. The eggs are hot. I like eating eggs. When I walked to the store, I said, I am walking. It is sunny. I feel good. When I coded, I narrated my actions. Now I'm writing a function. This function will calculate the user's score. The code needs to be efficient. My roommate Tomek thought I was losing my mind. He would catch me speaking to my reflection or narrating my shower routine, and he'd shake his head in bewilderment. What are you doing? He asked one day, as I described my morning coffee preparation process in English. Training my brain, I replied. This is how I'll become fluent. He laughed, but I didn't care. Talking to myself sounded ridiculous at first, but no one could hear me most of the time. It was my private classroom, and slowly my brain started thinking in English. I also began keeping a mistake journal. Whenever I said something and realized it was wrong, I wrote it down. At the end of each day, I reviewed my mistakes and corrected them. I am go to work became I am going to work. Yesterday I eat chicken became yesterday I ate chicken. This simple practice helped me catch patterns in my errors and fix them systematically. Stage 2. Speed and fluency. After a month, I felt a little more comfortable. My basic sentences flowed more naturally. I could describe simple actions without much hesitation, but there was still a big problem. I was too slow. Native speakers talked fast. When I watched American movies or listened to British podcasts, it felt like they were racing through their words. I couldn't keep up. My brain lagged behind. So I started what I called the question-answer training. Every day, I asked myself simple questions and answered immediately. What did you eat today? What are you doing now? What is your plan for tomorrow? At first, my answers were short. Question, what did you do today? Answer, work. But I forced myself to say more. Answer, I worked on a new software project. It was challenging but interesting. I learned a lot today. I would time myself with a stopwatch. In the beginning, it took me 15 to 20 seconds to form a decent answer. But with practice, I got faster. 10 seconds, then 5. then almost immediate responses. I also began recording myself and listening back. This was painful at first. Nobody likes hearing their own voice, especially when it's stumbling through a foreign language, but it helped me identify where I paused too long or where my pronunciation needed work. Pushing myself to add details trained my brain to speak faster, to form longer sentences naturally. I didn't just say, I like movies. I said, I like action movies with complex plots and interesting characters. My favorite director is Christopher Nolan because his films make me think. To further improve my speed, I practiced chain speaking. I would start with a simple sentence and then keep adding to it. I woke up. I woke up at 7 a.m. I woke up at 7 a.m. and made coffee. I woke up at 7 a.m., made coffee, and checked my emails. This exercise taught me to think ahead while speaking, a crucial skill for natural conversation. Stage 3. Fixing pronunciation. Even when I started speaking more fluently, my pronunciation was terrible. Native speakers could understand me, but I sounded robotic and foreign. My Polish accent was thick, particularly with sounds in the American R. I discovered a technique called echo practice. Every night, I chose short clips from movies or YouTube videos. I listened to one sentence, paused, and repeated it exactly, copying the speed, rhythm, and emotion. For example, I listened to a movie character say, "You gotta be kidding me." I repeated, "You gotta be kidding me," matching the tone and energy. It was exhausting at first. I had to repeat each sentence 10, sometimes 20 times. My throat would get sore, but I persisted. I would record myself saying the phrase, then play it back alongside the original. Were they similar? If not, I tried again. I focused especially on the musicality of English, the rise and fall of the voice, the stressed and unstressed syllables. Polish is much more monotone, so this was a challenge. But after weeks of doing this, my pronunciation improved dramatically. I also discovered that singing in English helps tremendously. I would pick simple songs, read the lyrics, understand their meaning, and then sing along. It felt silly at first, but it loosened up my mouth muscles and helped me internalize the rhythm of English. Native speakers started saying, "Wow, your English sounds really natural," when I spoke to them on language exchange platforms. That feedback was like fuel for my motivation. Stage 4. Vocabulary the smart way. Instead of memorizing random words, I started learning words in context. Every day I picked 5 new words from conversations I'd heard, articles I'd read, or shows I'd watched. I made sure these were words I might actually use, not obscure terms from a textbook. I created a small story using all 5 words and told it aloud. Example. Words: adventure, mountain, guide, danger, brave. Story. Last summer, I went on an adventure. I climbed a tall mountain with a local guide. There was danger everywhere, but I felt brave. Then I would expand the story. Last summer, I went on an adventure to the Swiss Alps. I climbed a tall mountain called Matterhorn with a local guide named Hans. There was danger on the steep paths, but I felt brave as we reached the summit. The view was worth every difficult moment. This method helped me actually use new words instead of just recognizing them on paper. I could feel them becoming part of my active vocabulary. I also grouped words by themes. One day I'd focus on office-related terms. Another day I'd learn the cooking vocabulary. This organization helped my brain create connections between related concepts. For technical terms related to my profession, I started reading programming documentation in English only. When I encountered a word I didn't know, I looked it up in an English dictionary, not a Polish translation. This forced me to think in English even for complex concepts. Stage 5. Living in English. By now, English was part of my daily life. I changed my phone's language to English. I stopped watching Polish YouTubers and only followed English creators. Every time I looked at something, a tree, a dog, a cup, I said the English word in my mind. Every night, I wrote a short journal entry in English. I created a total English environment without leaving my country. This immersion technique was powerful. I began to notice that sometimes I would think of the English word for something before the Polish word came to mind. My brain was rewiring itself. I also began keeping English-only hours in my day. From 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., I would only allow myself to consume English content and think in English. No Polish allowed. These hours became sacred to me. I found an English book club online and joined their weekly discussions. The first few meetings were challenging. I could hardly contribute. But I listened intently, and each week I pushed myself to speak a little more. Slowly but surely, I became someone who lived in English, not just someone studying English. Stage 6. Facing my fears. There was still one mountain I had not climbed, speaking with real native speakers. Even though I was improving, I was terrified of conversations. What if they laughed at me? What if I froze? What if they spoke too fast and I couldn't understand? I forced myself to join an online language exchange. The first meeting was a disaster. I stuttered, misunderstood, and wanted to quit. I was paired with James, a university student from Boston. He asked me about Polish culture, and my mind went blank. I couldn't remember basic facts about my own country when asked in English. But James was kind. He slowed down his speech. He repeated himself when I looked confused. He didn't laugh when I made mistakes, and the other learners in the group were also struggling with their own language challenges. There was Yuki from Japan, whose English was precise but very formal. There was Carlos from Brazil, who spoke rapidly but mixed up his prepositions. We were all in this together. Each meeting became easier. I began to recognize the patterns in natural conversation, the greetings, the small talk, the follow-up questions. I practiced these patterns until they became automatic. Soon I made friends from the US, Canada, and Australia. We talked every week. We laughed. We made mistakes. We learned together. The most valuable thing I gained from these exchanges wasn't just language practice, it was cultural understanding. I learned about American university life from James, about Australian slang from Sarah, about Canadian winters from Michael. English wasn't just a set of grammar rules anymore. It was a bridge to different worlds. Stage 7. Mastery through immersion. At the 4-month mark, I decided to push even harder. I joined online debates about topics I cared about: technology ethics, climate change, the future of remote work. At first, I could only make simple points, but as weeks passed, I found myself constructing more complex arguments, responding to others' points more effectively. I watched documentaries without subtitles. I started with simple ones about nature or history, but gradually moved to more complex subjects. I took notes in English as I watched, writing down key points and new vocabulary. I started reading novels in English. I began with young adult fiction, which has simpler language, then moved to classic literature. When I finished my first complete novel, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, I felt an enormous sense of achievement. I listened to audiobooks while jogging. The combination of physical activity and language immersion seemed to help my brain absorb the language better. I would hear a phrase while running, and somehow it would stick in my memory more effectively. I started a small blog in English writing about my coding projects. Each post was a struggle at first, but the act of organizing my thoughts in written English helped solidify my skills. I received comments from developers around the world, and responding to them became another form of practice. One day, something amazing happened. I realized I was dreaming in English. In my dream, I was explaining a coding concept to a group of people, and we were all speaking English. I woke up amazed. My subconscious had adopted this language that once seemed so foreign. That's when I knew I was no longer translating in my mind. English had become part of me. The victory. A new interview. 6 months after my failed interview, the same company posted another opening. This time, I applied with a smile. I knew I was ready. Not perfect. I still made mistakes, but ready to communicate, to connect, to show my true professional value. During the interview, I spoke confidently, naturally. I answered questions about my experience with React Native, explaining the projects I had worked on and the challenges I had overcome. I asked them questions about their development team structure and work methodology. I joked about my initial struggles with JavaScript's asynchronous functions. I discussed my projects passionately, sharing both technical details and the user experience considerations. Robert, the same interviewer from 6 months ago, was visibly surprised. Daniel, your English has improved dramatically, he said. What did you do? I smiled and told him briefly about my self-designed method. He seemed impressed not just by my language skills, but by my determination. And a week later, I received the email. Congratulations, Daniel. We are excited to offer you the position. I cried when I read it, not because of the salary, which was great, but because it meant I had won. I had conquered a fear that once seemed unbeatable. I had transformed a weakness into a strength. Life after fluency. The changes in my life didn't stop with the new job. English opened doors I never imagined possible. I joined international coding communities and contributed to open source projects. My suggestions and code were valued based on their quality, not hindered by my communication. I started mentoring junior developers from around the world, teaching them not just coding but also how to express technical concepts clearly. I attended virtual conferences where I could actively participate in discussions, ask questions, and even network with industry leaders. The most surprising change? My confidence. Not just in speaking English, but in all aspects of life. I had proven to myself that with the right method and persistence, I could overcome seemingly impossible challenges. My higher salary allowed me to start planning trips abroad, not just as a tourist, but as someone who could truly connect with locals through conversation. And professionally, I was no longer limited to local opportunities. The world had become my job market. Closing thoughts. How you can do it too. If you're reading this, maybe you're where I was. Frustrated, scared, stuck. I want you to know it's not magic. It's not talent. It's system plus effort plus patience. Here are the biggest lessons I learned. Mindset matters more than anything. If you believe you can do it, you will find a way. Your brain is capable of incredible feats when you push through discomfort. Daily speaking is crucial. Even if you speak to yourself, speak. Language is a physical skill as much as a mental one. Your mouth needs to learn new movements. Listening and shadowing work wonders. Don't just listen. Copy the native speakers. Mimic their intonation, their rhythm, their emotion. Vocabulary must be alive. Use new words in your life, not just in your notebook. Create stories, context, emotional connections to new terms. Mistakes are not failures. Every mistake brings you closer to fluency. Record them, learn from them, then move on without shame. Immersion can happen anywhere. You don't need to travel abroad. You just need to surround yourself with English every day. Create your own English environment. Connect language to purpose. Know why you're learning. For me, it was career advancement. For you, it might be travel, romance, education, or something else. This purpose will fuel you when motivation wanes. Consistency trumps intensity. 30 minutes every day is better than 5 hours once a week. Your brain needs regular exposure to form new neural pathways. Measure progress, not perfection. Celebrate small wins. Notice how what seemed impossible last month is now manageable. Join a community. Find other learners, native speakers willing to help, or online groups focused on language exchange. Learning with others accelerates your growth. Today, English has opened doors for me I never thought possible. New job, new friends, new confidence, new horizons. And trust me, If a scared small town guy like me can do it, so can you. Your journey starts now. Or